The Tottenham motto reads, "To dare is to do." And despite defeat to Chelsea on Saturday, a first half Spurs certainly dared. But wait for a win goes on. This is your e-Spurs podcast.
Come on, you Spurs! 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 Tottenham!
Hi guys, welcome back to another hour of all things THFC. Don't forget, we want you guys out there listening tonight to subscribe to the show via iTunes or on Acast. You get every new episode direct as it's released. We are, of course, on Twitter and Instagram if you want to follow us there at @e_Spurs. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/e-Spurs page. We're also on YouTube, Pinterest, Tumblr and various other social network platforms. So whatever your preference, just head to our website. That's www.espurs.blogspot.co.uk. On the e-Spurs podcast tonight, we'll be talking about the latest battle of the bridge on Saturday. Your questions return as we put your thoughts to the e-Spurs team, and we preview the forthcoming game as the Swans land in North London this weekend. So without further ado, let's kick off, guys, as always, by introducing the team that I'll be talking all things Spurs with tonight. It's Jason, Ricky, John and Ian. We've got a full house. How you doing, guys?
Not bad, mate, not bad.
Not bad, thanks. Andy, not bad.
Yeah, good as gold, mate. Nice to be back.
Yeah, fine, thanks, Andy.
Brilliant stuff, as always, guys. And as I say, although we didn't get the win on Saturday, we did say in the last podcast that as long as they put in a shift and a performance and showed that they was giving their all as opposed to the last game, then there wouldn't be any complaints. And first half, as I say, certainly did that on Saturday. Before we kick off tonight, a quick mention for one of our followers, From the Lane, at From the Lane 82, who's asked for a mention on the podcast tonight, listens to the podcast every week. So thanks for listening, guys, wherever you are around the world. And if you want to mention on next week's podcast, just drop us a line on the Twitter or Facebook and use the hashtag eSpursPod, and we'll give you a shout on next week's podcast. So let's kick off, shall we? Let's talk Tottenham and start with the game on Saturday, of course. London derby, Battle of the Bridge. History was against us, wasn't it? But let's start. John, welcome back, mate, first of all. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, mate. I'm glad to be back. Thankfully, work hasn't got in the way of this podcast, so we're all good.
Brilliant to have you back, mate. Let's start with you, shall we? What did you make of the game on Saturday?
Well, it's just one of them, again, isn't it? Just annoying. Like, if we're going to go to Stamford Bridge and lose, part of me would rather lose 5-0 just to know that you had no chance. And the fact that we've come out again with another narrow defeat from Stamford Bridge, it's just annoying the way it happened. We were so in control, playing so well. Lovely goal from Eriksens. I know we've used this expression loads of times, but a bit of gamecraft, maybe a bit of naivety, and they just managed to pick us off. They're horrible people. They do it to us every time. But I think it was one of them performances where, you know, we could be proud of the way we played. Really, it's just the result ultimately is the most important thing, and it's the one bit we didn't get.
Jay, pretty much dominated them first half, didn't we? Played them off the park. Yeah,
for 44 minutes, everything was going according to plan, and we perhaps should have been more than the one goal in front. But, you know, the gamecraft that I talked about last week that you have to have, you know, let's be fair, 44 minutes in, it's our free kick deep into their half. We try and take it quickly, but instead of trying to take it quickly to knock a ball forward, we take it quickly and then run sideways with it. You get caught, and seconds later it's 1-1, and that gave them a massive lift going into half time. So, but you know, did we see the passion we wanted to see? I thought overall that we did. Did we see the effort go in there? I don't think anyone could really have a pop at the effort. I thought, you know, the left back situation was never ever going to be as we all wanted it, was it? I mean, if we'd have played Jan at left back, then we'd have had the exposure of Dyer and Wimmer in the middle. And I thought over the 90 minutes, if you looked at Wimmer's performance, he didn't do that badly at left back. But obviously the goal comes and it's Wimmer's man, although, you know, why there was 8 people left of the ball rather than there was way too many than we needed to get left of the ball. So I don't think you can just pin the goal on Kevin Wimmer. I think that's a bit scapegoat looking. But, you know, just a little bit of gamecraft that we needed to have in that last minute wasn't there, and we paid the price.
Yeah, it's such a Spursy thing to happen, isn't it? You know, end up conceding straight away to Chelsea. Having said that, Rick, there was, as Jay mentioned, so many good performances in that first half that's worth a mention. And they do need a mention because of the run we've been on. Who, I think I know what you might say, but who for you stood out on Saturday?
I think Nkudu was the bright shining light. I know it was very much a cameo role he had, but I came away from the game feeling very positive about the guy. He hasn't had much time, which we alluded to on the last pod. I think he's a very much raw, young, talented player that hopefully will grow under Pochettino. I like the fact that he can take a player on. You know, he took Willian on, he got to the byline, got a ball in the box. He reminds me a lot, I said it today on Twitter, he reminds me a lot of Aaron Lennon. He showed shades of him in terms of that kind of pace down the line. Can definitely get fans off their seat. I just hope that he can provide more of an end product than Aaron Lennon. And the way we pressed the ball in those first, like I say, that first half, and just bar the equaliser, I just thought we've pressed them so well. And then for the goal, the amount of time, I know it was a wonderful strike by Pedro, but the amount of time we had to kind of pirouette and find the goal, I just thought we could have pressed him. It was such an avoidable goal to concede, and that, I think, is the frustrating thing. You know, it's ironic that in that first half we really did kind of impose our game on them in terms of that high press. And Chelsea, really, you could see Conte's frustration on the touchline. He didn't really know what to do or how to change it, and for that split second, we don't press them. Ironically, that's when they score. But Moussa Dembele, for me, I'm a massive Moussa Dembele fan. I just think
he's a beast, isn't he?
He's a beast, but I just think this game itself, you know, he didn't turn up for me. And you do need your best players to turn up, especially when you go into the bridge without the likes of your key players such as Jacoby Alderweireld, Eric Lamela. I think we're missing, I said on the last pod, we're really missing Lamela. I think his creativity and work rate that he brings to Spurs, that kind of galvanises the 11 that's out there, and we're just simply missing that for me. There's no doubt Alderweireld's leadership at the back is severely missed. You know, the thing is that for Swansea next week, we will have potentially those three back rows, Alderweireld, Lamela, and we're a different side. Because I think, really, if you put those three in our team going to Chelsea, I think it could very much have been a different game and different result. But, you know, like we said, Nkudu's a big positive. I'd like to see him start next week and onwards, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking, upwards and onwards, which I think that performance has given us a nice little springboard, isn't it, first off? Although they didn't get the win, I think they take a lot of confidence from that. And Ian, another player that might take some confidence from Saturday, who's come in for a lot of criticism over the last few months, is, of course, Christian Eriksens. Scored a fantastic goal on Saturday, then went a bit quiet, didn't he? Do you think that could be the springboard for him?
I hope so. I think we all know that there is a really good player there. We've seen him do it for us over the last few seasons, and do it for his national club, his international club, Denmark. And I just think it would be nice for him to have taken some confidence from what was a thunderous strike and take that into the next few weeks of our fixture list.
Was there any concern, do you think, Ian, at how quiet he went after that? Because after the goal, he didn't seem to affect the game as much as some of the other players around him, did he?
Yeah, I think it became quite an attritional midfield battle up to the 44-minute point where we've said that Chelsea got their goal, but in the second half, I think that we slowly started to wrest control back, and as Ricky's just said, once Jason's mate set the sign came on, we were back into the game again.
I mean, it could have gone either way, couldn't it? It was that sort of game. First half, I think we could have put a cardboard cutout of Lloris in goal and not have had too many problems. It was that sort of first half, and then makes it even more frustrating them to go and win it like they did. But John, of course, it is a nice springboard, isn't it? And looking forward, at Stamford Bridge, it's always going to be a tough game and a physical game. What did you make of the physical battles out there? Because we've seen in previous years, it's a bit tasty, this one.
Well, it weren't as bad as the last one. Let's put it that way. I think that very much would have been in the forefront of the players' minds going out onto the pitch yesterday. That because of really Clattenburg didn't do a very good job in was it April, May, whenever we went there last, and there should have been a few red cards. You're probably thinking, as someone like Eric Dyer's probably thinking, right, I'm starting this game on a yellow card because this ref knows what happened last time. But yeah, I think in that respect, I think it was pretty controlled. I think it weren't, nothing more than a usual London derby. It's just a good job that it's not 11 fans running around the pitch, really, because there would have been some murders yesterday, I think. See, I think maybe this is my problem. And I'm not a tactician, I'm not a football manager. But can I tell you the thing that annoyed me the most yesterday?
Go on.
Victor Moses. And I tell you what it is about Victor Moses. I respect the fact that he's managed to revive his career, and whether you're giving that the credit to him or to Conte. what really wound me up, and I hate this about modern football, I really do, when players kiss the badge and all that kind of stuff, because you know that they're doing it for effect, right? I'm getting angry now talking about it. Victor Moses, right? This geezer, he's had more loans than Wonga. He scores a goal in a London derby. He thinks he's Billy Big Spuds and points to the badge. I wanted to jump through my TV screen and strangle him.
And I don't think you was alone, John.
Get off my TV, mate. That really wound me up, that did. Honestly, whether it's just me, but all that, I can't stand all that.
And I don't know if you saw, but there was Pedro who went over to Poch after scoring, didn't he? Sort of, fronted up towards Poch's direction after the goal. And yeah, I agree. We all went into it with a Spursy type optimism, I think. Hope for the best, but fear the worst kind of attitude towards the game. But, as I say, the first half was fantastic. And Jay, just to finish up on the Chelsea talk, can this be a springboard, do you think, moving forward? Of course, we'll talk about Swansea later on in the podcast, but can the first half be that springboard we need to get our first win since West Ham?
Well, I think, as you say, that first 44 minutes, we played well. We played, there were still one or two things you want better, but let's be fair, it was a hell of a lot better than we've seen for some time. And I think, when you look at 4 games to come and you see Swansea home, Hull home, Burnley home, you'd think, if you could play like that and stretch that even maybe to 60 minutes, then that should be enough to beat teams like that. But of course, we want to get back to getting a full 90-minute performance in. But, hopefully with the injury news that Toby, fingers crossed, will be back next week and Lamela should be back available. It was fantastic for Eriksens to score. Hopefully that's given him that bit of... It was his first goal from, 67 shots or something like that. So, that's the monkey off his back. Hopefully he'll take some confidence from that. And, another week, a clear week this week to get 1 or 2 of the lesser fit players ready. I mean, if anyone had any doubts that Dele Alli's not fit, just look how much strapping he had on him yesterday. And don't tell me you take Dele Alli off after 70 minutes at 2-1 down in a derby if he's fit. So, I thought his performance in that first half was excellent, and it was more like the Dele Alli we knew. But, I'm confident. I mean, as I said today, I think after 17 games last year, we had 29 points. So, and we're on, 24 after 13. So I'm pretty certain we'll take enough points to have a better position after 17 games this year than we are last year.
Jay, just very quickly while I've got you on, I know on last week's podcast, for those who didn't listen, you mentioned that Spurs need to learn Gamecraft and learn how to, shut down games. I saw John Ellis, who's obviously been on the podcast previously, also mentioned the same on his Facebook. Just for everybody who wasn't listening last week, just clarify, exactly what do you mean by Gamecraft?
Well, with a minute to go in the 44th minute, and as I say, we have a free kick in their half, there's no need to rush that free kick. And there's definitely no need to get caught in possession. If you're going to take a free kick, make it a really positive one, or you can put the ball into the safe areas of the pitch knowing that there's only a minute left. I mean, you could have, and it wouldn't have surprised you to see a really top side take that free kick and put it all the way back to Lloris. And then, the time Lloris wastes a couple of seconds and the referee blows his whistle and you go in at half-time 1-0 up. It's the clever fouls. It's, when you've got a player penned in looking at his own goal. I think we had once yesterday, who do we have facing his own goal from a corner or something? And Kevin Wimmer, no, it was our corner, wasn't it? That's right. We had a corner, they half clear it, and then Kevin Wimmer bundles into Hazard right on the edge of Chelsea's box. And you think, there you go. It's just that little Gamecraft. Don't make silly fouls in places that you don't need to make them in. And we still need to learn to be clever in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about being a bit ruthless, isn't it, in some senses? And, I think Mourinho has bred that into Chelsea, if you like, over the last, 10 years or so. He's very much that type of character. Well, he was before he joined Man United. And I think we've got to, as you say there, Jace, be more clever. And I'm sure if we do that, we'll win more points than we lose.
You look at our benches yesterday. Now, what Jay's talking about there, I think a lot of it comes with experience. And, Jay's been watching football for a long time, so we're not going to argue with him. But they reckon that Chelsea's bench had nearly 800 Premier League appearances between them, and ours had 79. And Kieran Trippier was 46 of those, I believe the stat was. So when you look at it like that, You know, that's why teams like that with that much experience are not going to do the things that ultimately ended up in our downfall. I think that's just what it is. You've got a young squad there who maybe, when the going gets tough, they lose their heads a little bit, whereas, with that more experience, you tend not to.
What I was going to say, Les, just very much on the benches. I know we've discussed this on the last pod and previous pods as well. I just think looking at the benches, the evident lack of a game changer, I think it was one of our biggest concerns, was we going to address this kind of area in the windows? And, I still think we're a couple short of someone that's going to come in and change the game. Now, people may argue, well, Lamella's out injured, would it have been a different game if we had him as an option? But I just felt looking at the game yesterday, when you want someone to come on, make a difference, change the game, you're looking at our bench and really there's not much on there. In Kudu himself has only had a couple of games. We can't expect this lad just to come in and, change a game in the space of 10, 15 minutes. I think we are seriously lacking some kind of player that's going to come on and teams are going to be scared of him. You look at Chelsea, for me, Hazard, whether, like I say, he has a good or bad day, I think he does intimidate defences. And I just don't think we've got that kind of player at the moment. And that's, I think, the biggest overriding concern is that the business we've done in the summer, in my opinion, we're still lacking that player that really does intimidate an opposing team. And I can only hope that's something we will address in the future, but I won't hold my breath.
I was going to say, I think the difference is we want champagne football, but it's a lemonade budget, isn't it? Ultimately, that's what
I think you're spot on there, John. Hit that nail on the head.
Comes back to, mate.
And I've been thinking about this over the last few days since we did the last pod, because Jace mentioned on the last pod that it's difficult for Tottenham to compete because of the budget restraints at the moment. And I was, of course, on the last podcast calling out for, stronger players to be brought in. And it kind of got me down afterwards thinking, you know what, we're going to be in this cycle for the next 10 years or so until we've recovered from the new stadium being built of signing players that are prospects or, we hope might develop, the likes of Nkudu, the likes of Janssen. I certainly can't see us going out and getting a world-class player. And as Jay said, there's no guarantees that world-class players will come in and do any good. But I think for morale and to be able to affect a game, I think you're spot on there, Rick. It's exactly what we need. Whether or not it will happen, I genuinely don't think it will, because you've got January coming up. As you said on last week's podcast, Rick, we're out of the Champions League. So who's realistically going to want to come to us, first of all, and who's going to be available? So I think we're majorly limited in January to be able to get someone like that. You're looking at next summer. And as I say, it's this cycle of transfer windows again, isn't it? But don't get me started on transfers. Let's move on to questions, shall we? As always, we put your questions, guys, to the e-Spurs team on anything and everything Tottenham Hotspur. So this is the part where you take over the show and get the chance to grill the lads on the e-Spurs podcast. So let's hit some questions, shall we, and put those to the team. First up, let's go to Ian. Let's start with you, mate, tonight. And this is from Joval Orby at JOrby. He asked, can you discuss why we no longer seem to pose any threat with corners or free kick, which is something we've spoken about, isn't it, over the last few weeks?
If you want me to answer that question with my tongue firmly planted in my cheek,
go on.
We need to get the ball over the first man first. But, all jokes aside, I think that if you look at the way corners are done now, and where most people do this zonal marking, I think we've always succeeded with the near post corner and players like Alderweireld and Dyer coming in and getting on the end of them. Now, you've only got to get that trajectory wrong and it gets cleared by the first man. And now going on to the free kicks thing, sometimes I think we have to mix it up a bit because at the end of the day, Christian Eriksen has made a career of scoring the occasional free kick. And sometimes, maybe we should mix it up a bit because everybody knows that if we get a free kick out, within 20 or 30 yards out, Eriksen's going to have a pop. Now, there are other players, and we've seen Eric Dyer do it for England and for Spurs, and I think we maybe look at mixing up the free kicks to make them more sort of like challenging for our opponents. So that's what I would say to that particular question, Andy.
Yeah, you'd think it would be something they work on a regular basis. I mean, we saw, didn't we, the Sheringham Anderton corner that obviously they practiced and was was brilliant, wasn't it? And it doesn't seem to be any invention, does there? It seems to be the same sort of tactic of just trying to hit it and hope into the middle. It doesn't seem to be. Might be wrong. I'm not there at training, but that's certainly the way it seems. And I think also maybe some of the other players, as you say there, Ian, need to be a bit bold and, if you like, push Eriksens off the free kicks for a little bit. Okay, next question. We're going to come back to you, John. This question's from Regan at RJ77. He asked, why does it seem that Poch doesn't trust the players that he signed, i.e. Nkudu and Janssen, on a regular basis?
I don't think it's trust at all. I just think it was the fact that these players were brought in to support the players that were already there. And if the players that got us to third in the Premier League last season are fit, then they're going to play. I mean, I said in the summer, we don't really need to spend £60 million on a player to replace a player that had got us into third place. It was all about increasing the competition within the squad. And I think that, all right, we have seen it before where Benji Stambouli is the one that stands out. He brought him in, it didn't work out, and he was gone within a season. So I can't see that happening to any of the players that came in last year, to be honest. I do think that there is, hopefully a long-term future for players like Nkudu because, as Ricky said earlier on, he came on and he made a positive impact. And I for one, really hope he gets a start, soon, maybe against Swansea even, because he's that, a bit of direct pace and his work rate's decent as well. As we've said, we're missing Lamela in that position, out wide. So, no, I don't think he lacks trust in the players that he's brought in. I think they're, as Jason has said before, they're not going to be the world beaters that the Bayern Munich's and Barcelona's are going to be trying to sign. So they're not necessarily going to come in and improve the first team. It's all about integrating them and giving them their chance when the first team players, the standout players, need a rest or he wants to rotate. I think we'll see plenty of everyone really between now and the end of the season. I can't see a player being exiled, a la Adebayor or Fazio this season, because there don't seem to be any bad eggs in there really. And we are doing all right, I think. Although you look at 1 win in 10 and all that, but I think that's not a statistic that we should dwell on. I think things are a lot more positive than that suggests at the minute. We'll be all right, and I trust him. So
I just want to pick you up on what you said about the signings, because it's interesting thinking back to last week's pod and a few previous to that. The lads on the pod were saying that they thought that we needed to maybe sign players that were better than our first 11 to overall increase the strength of the squad, keep strengthening. Harry Kane, for example, we mentioned, we always seem to be signing a striker or looking for a striker who's going to come in as backup, whereas maybe we should be looking for a striker of equal or better quality than Kane that will give him more competition. What do you make of that?
It's going to cost too much. It's impractical, really. Because if you're talking about, bringing in someone who's equal to the Premier League Golden Boot winner, I won't use Jamie Vardy as an example, but he was one who was touted for a move in the summer. We were never interested in him because, he's shown this season that he's pony, really, in my opinion. We're not going to sign Aguero. Ibrahimovic was never going to be the one for us. I think the only player that has come in and improved the first 11 is Victor Wanyama. I think we look a lot stronger in that department with him there, and you can't trust Dembele's fitness always. And, we've needed Eric Dyer elsewhere in the team. So Wanyama's been the one for me. And that was the most important position, I think. I think we all agreed, if I remember rightly, that midfield screener, really, if you like, in front of the back four was the one we needed. And I think Wanyama's the best in our squad at doing that. I'm not comparing him to Dembele. I'm not saying he's better than Dembele. I just mean that player that will just sit there, he's like a decent Stefan Freund. He's a Stefan Freund who can play football, Wanyama.
I like the way you put a decent Stefan Freund in there.
Well, I can't imagine Stefan Freund doing that pirouette between two players like Wanyama did on Saturday. But yeah, with the other players, I think, the majority of them are a lot younger than the amount of experience we really needed. But I'm sure they'll show their worth eventually. And Vincent Janssen will score a goal that isn't a penalty soon, I promise you.
And on that, John, every signing we didn't make is always going to be better than everyone we did, isn't it? And as I try to point out, let's be fair, did we want Mkhitaryan in the summer? If we'd have been offered Mkhitaryan and could have afforded him and could have afforded the fee, would we have taken him? Absolutely, we would have done. We'd have said, that's just the type of player we needed. He's gone to Manchester United and started one game.
Well, this is the thing when you said about that.
I've seen other players, cheaper options. Why didn't we sign Sofiane Boufal? There's another young player that attracted lots of attention last year. He's been brought to Southampton by a manager that was in the French league last year that knows him. He started 3 games, and today Southampton went with a kid from the academy instead of him. So I'm not saying that everything we did in that transfer window was right or we couldn't have done better, but not everyone that everyone suggests we should have signed necessarily works. Bernardo Silva in the week had a fantastic game against us, as he did at Wembley, ripped us to pieces. And you look there, I think it was Ian that said to me, would he have improved our squad? Absolutely. The Bernardo Silva that we saw against us would have been an improvement on our squad. And yet, Nkudu outperformed him last year. So there you go. It's easy, isn't it? We should have signed Bernardo Silva instead of Nkudu. It's not always that easy. You know, some big signings have come to the Premier League and they just haven't worked.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's all easy on paper and in hindsight, isn't it? It's I'd like to see Spurs show a little bit more ambition in the transfer market. That's my only concern. However, as you say, Jay, as you said last week, you made the point that we're probably not going to see that ambitious signing for the next 5-10 years or so until the stadium's paid off. And the wage structure, well, that's another podcast on its own. But yeah, no, I agree completely.
I mean, we all want to do it. Remember the excitement about Götze in the summer for those 2 weeks when it was suggested Mario Götze will sign for Spurs, and there were lots of people in dreamland, and there were a few of us that said, get real, we're never going to sign Götze. But I mean, Götze, let's be fair, who wouldn't have taken Götze if we'd have genuinely had the chance? He's gone back to a league, he stayed in a league he knows, he's gone back to an old club that he knows, so there's no settling in period. He started 3 games for Dortmund. You can't pin your colours to the mast and say, if we'd have signed Mario Götze, he'd have scored 8 goals and had 15 assists by now.
No, absolutely. You can never say that about any transfer. I do think, though, that shouldn't put us off being ambitious. You know, the fact that other transfers haven't worked out, you know. I think we should still aim high. And but we shall see. Maybe they will. Maybe they'll go and surprise us in January. Who knows? I think there's still areas of the squad that need, you know, addressing, aren't there? And as Poch said last week, and then sort of backtracked a little bit, I think he knows more than anyone there's areas of the squad that need strengthening. So we shall see. We shall see. Thanks for your question. Next question goes, well, we're going to come back to you actually, Jay, on this one. This is from Devikiran Paj. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. And he says, what should be Poch's plan from here to the end of the season, bearing in mind what's happened so far?
Stay in a job.
Avoid the job centre.
And I sincerely hope he does it. No, I mean, you know, we've got to get back to what we did last year. And as we also, we've got to then develop other ways of playing. But, you know, I'm confident that with players coming back to fitness and that, we'll replicate a lot of what we did last year. And then it's trying to develop those extra parts where we can get around teams shutting us down. Or I think the one thing that disappoints me with Poch is that we've got to find a way of sorting ourselves out when we're the team that's being pressed. I think that's been the biggest disappointment for a manager that plays the high pressing action so much himself. He doesn't seem to be able to get us to handle when we're pressed. And I think that's certainly something he's got to work out and needs to improve.
Absolutely. I'd like to see also some sort of clarification on what competitions are a priority. Realistically, the FA Cup, but then he might once again play the kids in that. So
at the moment, you consistently try and pick up points in the league because that's all we're involved in now for the next month. And then, you know, if we'll know Monday night what the draw for the FA Cup is. I mean, for instance, if we got Manchester City away or Chelsea away, that's a lot different than if we've got Hartlepool United at home, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, you know, let's get to that stage. Let's see what the draw is. We'll react to that, and then we move on for the next round, hopefully. And, you know, by the time Europa starts in February, as I've said, to me, if we're 12 points behind the top 4 and we're going in and we're still in the FA Cup or the Europa League, then you take those competitions as the primary games, and you think, well, we'll find out if Josh Onham was good enough for Premier League football by playing him in the Premier League games. If we reach the end of February and we're in the top 4 or 2 or 3 points off it, then it's an entirely different situation then. I think you can only genuinely answer that question when you know what the position of us is at that stage.
I mean, take each game as it comes, and it's the old cliche, but it's so true. We shall see, as you say, Monday night, the draw for the FA Cup. One thing you can guarantee, I tell you what, Jay, is that Arsenal will be at home. You can put money on that now. But
who fancies a trip to Stamford Bridge for round 3?
Oh dear, you can see it coming.
Can I just say, lads, sorry to jump in again, you know, not so much for you, me and Ricky, because we're
there's no offence to you, Ian and Jay, but because you've been around for that bit longer and you grew up watching football where there weren't Russian billionaires and Arab sheikhs involved in football, you start off that season in August every year with pretty much an even playing field. And the dream is, can we win the title or can we win the cup? And now it's, I think we can get top 4 this year. That winds me up, St. Chronic. It really does. You see, I know hindsight's a wonderful thing, and maybe I'm saying this because we're out of the Champions League already, but I would quite happily swap our season last season for Man United's. They finished 5th, but they won the cup. You know what I mean? And it was ultimately disappointment and a really bitter taste that was left in the mouth at the end of last season, and that I don't think we really appreciated, we've got Champions League football. Just because of the way the season ended, I think if we'd have sneaked it maybe last game, it would have been different. But I definitely, if that question is ever put to me or anything similar, I would say, sod the top 4. We do need to be putting some silverware in the cabinet.
But that's the thing, isn't it, John? Because, I don't want to have a go at the club again and leave you because I did enough of that last week. But they keep telling us the game's about glory, and it seems now glory is 4th place.
Well, that's what I mean. I think you hear slogans and comments like that in football, in the world of football, it's commonplace nowadays because the clubs want us to be in the top 4 and are not worried about winning the FA Cup because the amount of money that it makes them. And I understand that. And I understand that a manager's remit has changed over the years. For Keith Birkinshaw, Bill Nicholson, or Terry Venables, they wouldn't have swapped what they achieved for being in the European Cup every year but never winning it. We look back fondly on those times because there was, some of them are black and white, unfortunately, but photos of captains lifting trophies.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean? And I think that's the concern, isn't it, from a lot, especially of our generation, John? Will we ever see that again now? If we're saying that Spurs' ambition is top 4 now, and it seems, I don't think Spurs are alone in that, are they? In fairness, I think most clubs now would prioritise the league over the cups, but those days seem to have gone, don't they?
It's a vicious cycle, but I'd rather us win any cup.
Why can't we go for everything?
Cup. Well, I mean, you have to ask the manager. He's the one who decides to rest players for a game that we must win and save them for a game where our league table position cannot change regardless of result at the weekend. You know what I mean? I think that's why we all had the ump, especially because of the team. That I understand. I'd see what I mean. I understand why he tinkered like he did, but we end up losing both games. And we're out of the Champions League. And it just, if you'd gone full tilt for it on Tuesday and we'd have still lost yesterday, you wouldn't hurt so much. You know what I mean?
The whole concept has changed, though, for me, in my day. Because, the FA Cup, if you got to the FA Cup and you won it 30, 40 years ago, it was almost seen as an equivalent of winning the league. And, I can remember going to League Cup ties in the 1980s. And you'd have a 4th round cup tie at home to, say, a 2nd division or a 3rd division club in those days, and you'd still get 45,000 with everyone packed on the shelf watching a 4th round League Cup tie. But now you struggle to sell tickets at £20 a seat for a League Cup game, don't you? If you want a challenge to win the league, and that's your ultimate goal, and I suppose that's what it should be, everyone's ultimate goal, then you're right. You have to attract better players, which means you've got to have Champions League football, and you have to have the Champions League revenue that goes with it. You won't see too many teams, say, that would win the FA Cup 3 years in a row, and the next year they'll go on and win the League Championship, unless they're teams that are already, established with all that money. It's how you want to do it, isn't it? I'd love us to win a trophy. I was fuming last year when we left players out. I was fuming at Liverpool the other night. But, I suppose in today's money generation, something has to give. And
I think that's the point we were making a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it? That, when you get in that Champions League, you need to buy players that are Champions League quality to keep you in it, which is, they seem to have done the opposite and taken a cut price option, which has backfired almost. Thanks for your question. Let's move on to the final question of tonight. It goes to Rick. Rick started off with transfers, so let's have the last question on transfers. Brian Daly at Baz Daly asked, 2 players in and 2 out in January. Who would you choose?
Well, I don't want to kind of kill the guy's hopes. I wouldn't get his hopes up if we're going to get anyone in, to be honest with you, Andy. Very well-respected journalist Lyle Thomas tweeted today, and he said that Spurs' policy, as under his understanding, is that any players coming in will be subject to us letting players go. And on that basis, I think we saw a massive summer clear-out. And on that basis, I don't see where there's going to be much movement. I think what I do want to pick up on is Musa Sissoko. This is a guy we spent 30 million on, deadline day. Allegedly, I say 30 million because we don't know the breakdown of the fee. And the guy didn't even get into the matchday squad. Now, roll yourself back to Tuesday night. He came out, Mr. Sissoko, I think just after the game himself, or maybe the Wednesday morning, and said that the squad lacks depth. Roll yourself then to Saturday, and the guy's not even in the squad. Now, Pochettino does have this habit of very much that if you undermine him, then you're very much kind of out the door. Now, I'm not saying that's the case because the guy's only had, a handful of games. We've not seen the best of him. You could arguably say we've seen the worst of him so far. But, I think we've got to be realistic and say that I don't see too much business being done. And I've got to say, the money we've spent at the moment, apart from Wanyama, we're not seeing much value for it. Janssen, I love his work rate. I can't fault his effort and commitment. I feel like I'm repeating myself when I talk about him, like Soldado. I said the same exact thing. He looks like he links up play well. Is he going to get us 25 goals? Unfortunately, from what I've seen at the moment, I don't think that's the case. Maybe he'll come good in the second season like Lamela has done. In Kudu, I'm looking a bit more positive with him. I've got to say, he's very, very young. He looks like he's got that kind of raw ability that can very much grow into a player. And Pochettino has had that kind of development stage with the likes of Danny Rose and Kyle Walker for us to feel a bit more positive that there's definitely some form of a player in there. But I'll be honest, in terms of January, I can't see much movement happening purely because Spurs, like I've said on this question, we did do so much business in the summer in terms of moving players out, and we're out the Champions League as well, so that's another carrot gone where you think that would be a reason for Spurs to invest. I think really we're 8 points off the top at the moment. I've got to say that if we're going to go into that January window having a hope of bringing anyone in, we're going to have to be on the coattails of the likes of Manchester City and Chelsea. And that means we're going to have to pick up some big, big wins in the next month and start having to find some consistent form. And although I don't want to kind of look too much into it, like John said, 1 win in 10, it doesn't look great. And in that 1 win in 10, like I say, we've come back against the likes of Arsenal, West Brom to get points. As much as I'd love to see it, I'd still think we need, like I said, a form of a game changer. Whether or not that comes, Andy, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to put my neck out and say yes or no.
It can be difficult, isn't it? It's difficult for everyone in January. Generally, the big transfers don't happen. One other question we had sent in just relating to that was from Graham Hooper at Trust, and he says possible January signing Daniel Sturridge. Discuss. Daniel Sturridge for me is too much of a sick note. I think he's hot and cold, isn't he? He's not.
But the problem, like you say, is he's not fit. I tell another player I did like Wilfried Zaha. I got absolute pelters on Twitter when I was saying, yeah, I'm all for Zaha. I looked at him Saturday against Palace, and he's in a struggling Palace side. And for me, he looks like the rough diamond there that I think under Poch he could shine. And I know, Andy, you're very popular amongst the fact that you would like to see Spurs kind of go back very much to the kind of Redknapp era of the kind of the bustling, the hustling wingers we had with Lennon and Bale. I'm kind of a bit unsure as to if that would now work in the Premier League era of today if you're going to have two wingers. But, I mean, if you could put Zaha on one side and Kudu on the other, and then Kudu can kind of get up to speed, that's a force for anyone to be reckoned with, that kind of intimidation of pure pace. Because this league we're in now, it very much is a case of if you have got pace, it makes such a difference to the league. You look at Manchester City, their team, it's full of pace. Yaya Touré's not the quickest, but he still does have that kind of way about him where he can bomb forward and find goals. And I think Zaha would just give us another option. It really, really would. That kind of player that offers us that alternative, that when we're being pressed, if we can change a game, which I think, like Jay has alluded to, is Poch's biggest issue at the moment. It's changing a game midway. He's very much great at, kind of imposing this the high pressing game. But when it's being done to us, we have no answer midway in order to change tactics and change a game. That's what we haven't seen yet. And if you're going to look to make any signings in the window in January, for me, it's all about bringing in players that can have a potential difference in different systems we play. And Zaha, for me, would offer that.
Just on Daniel Sturridge, why doesn't Jurgen Klopp want him?
Yeah.
What did he say on his last England performance? I'm not, he more or less intimated he sees himself as a player in the penalty box or just the edges of that, and he doesn't see the point of chasing around. Jurgen Klopp doesn't want him because he won't high press. What would Mauricio Pochettino want from a striker? He's got a fantastic goal record. I think he is an excellent natural. I think he's probably a better natural striker than Kane is. I think there's times when he's first touch and he's got a finish in him that Kane doesn't always have. He's certainly got more pace than Kane. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying he's a better striker than Harry Kane, but there's certainly elements to his game that are better than Kane's, just there is the other way round. But, you know, how much would Liverpool be prepared to sell him to a rival club for as well? You know, if Liverpool want to pay 30 million, he's on 130 grand a week. Does he want to take a wage cut? And, you know, he's clearly not a player that Pochettino would look at. I think if you wrote down 20 names on the sheet for Pochettino and said which one, Daniel Sturridge wouldn't be amongst the 20 names. So as much as fans want it, and as much as I understand it, it's a bit like on Twitter today, we're talking about Charlie Austin. Charlie Austin's a fantastic goal scorer in the Premier League. He's up to what already, you know, he's a proven goal scorer in the Premier League. But Pochettino didn't want to go anywhere near him. So, you know, whether that's right or wrong, just look at it and say, you know, is Daniel Sturridge a Pochettino signing? And the answer's clearly a no.
No. I also think the wages might put our chairman off as well. So I think that's another reason it probably won't happen. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly another area of the squad. Could he play as a 10 and a 9? Yeah, I guess he can do. Whereas, Jay, you mentioned quite rightly on the podcast last week that you think Kane is definitely more of a 9. And Son seems to be hot and cold in that, you know, attacking midfield role, doesn't he? Dele Alli is great there, and that's the player you ideally really want there, but he seems to get pushed further back. So it might be an area they maybe look at, I think. I don't know. Not January, but certainly for the summer. We shall see. Let's move on to the final part of the podcast tonight, shall we, guys? Let's look forward, onwards and upwards to Swansea at the weekend. And two teams with very similar record. Swansea 1 winning 11, us 1 winning 10. Of course, just off the back of a massive 5-4 win, Swansea. So playing them arguably at the wrong time. It's these type of teams, isn't it, that over the last season or so have been the hardest for Spurs to break down. Arguably, we've played better against the bigger side. So can Spurs finally crack one of these defences and get a win on Saturday?
I'd like to think so. And from memory, having seen some of the last games we've had against Swansea, they've been a bit more open affairs because Swansea have always wanted to play football against us. Yeah. So I'm hopeful that we can come up against a team who, you know, buoyed by the result last week, might want to come and play us a bit rather than, you know, do the park the bus job. So, you know, let's hope that we have a good open game and that we come out on top.
Certainly much needed. And Jay, do you see any formation-wise and selection-wise? Do you see any changes to Saturday?
Difficult to know without, you know, let's say Friday where we are with injury-wise. I'm sure if he can, well, obviously Danny Rose will come back and that will be an advantage. And if, fingers crossed, at least Toby gets to get on, you know, we get to see Toby again. You know, Swansea, I mean, as Ian said, Swansea took it to Everton, I think 2 weeks ago, played really well at Everton and then got caught in the last minute. And they gave it to Palace for 75 minutes yesterday. And as much as Swansea scored 5, they still let in 4. And it was interesting to see them leaving the field, 10 Swansea players looking overjoyed with the result. And our old boy Gylfi, with just perhaps a little bit more of a football brain than the others, walked off shaking his head, looking totally embarrassed by it, as if to say, you know, we can't play like this ever again. So, no, I'd like to see Nkudu certainly get a start. I think it's at that stage where you look at it with Swansea home, Hull home, Burnley home. I mean, if Nkudu's not going to get a start in those games, then you definitely have to say, when's he going to get a start? But, you know, I think he's earned enough in the little clips we've seen to at least give him a start against Swansea. But I'm very confident we'll get the result and we'll be right back on track. Or not necessarily back on track to win the league, but, you know, just a nice win, I think, will lift everybody's spirits and get a little bit of confidence going again.
It certainly will. And of course, John, Jay's mentioned there, Gylfi Sigurdsson, you know, nice to see him back at the lane. One player I think most Spurs fans across the board, you know, were fond of. Who else in there do you think Spurs might have to be wary of?
Not many, to tell you the truth. I think, you know, I was at the game last season at White Hart Lane where we eventually broke them down after being 1-0 down. We come back to win 2-1. But they had Ashley Williams playing on form that day, I remember, and I think with Swansea, like Jay just said, they did score 5. They're never going to get anywhere near doing that against us. They're just not. And if Crystal Palace can bang 4 past them, then that gives me great hope. I think, apart from Sigurdsson, they've had Fernando Llorente, who was, he was coming to Spurs, and then the riot happened. I think they might have put him off in 2011. But other than him, I don't know. They're a funny team, Swansea. I don't know what it is. I've got a bit of a soft spot for them. I think maybe it's just because they give West Ham their one away day in Europe every year, don't they? I think it's just they come into the league a few years ago now, and they've had some good managers like Laudrup, and Martinez done a great job there. And they, like you say, they do try and play football. I think that will play right into our hands if they do that. So I don't think they will. I think if you look at it from their point of view, after the horrific start to the season they've had, if they was to get a win as they did on Saturday and a point at White Hart Lane, that'd be 4, really massive points for them. So I can't see them coming to try and win. Although Bob Bradley, he seems a bit naive at the minute still. He's getting used to the league and all that, but I don't think he's silly enough to come and try and open us up at White Hart Lane. And I think it's either going to be a frustrating afternoon or a walk in the park. Just because we're as unpredictable as they are, I think I think we'll have too much for them. I do think it'll be a home win.
It's a nice game to come into for us, isn't it? In a lot of ways, you say they're a passing side, so that hopefully will be exactly the type of team we will play well against. Be nice to have Rose back. Fantastic to have his pace again down that side. More balance to the side. Let's have central defenders as central defenders and left backs as left backs. So that would be great to see. And Ian, just to finish up on the Swansea game, in terms of their form coming into it, how much of a boost do you think that win will be? Could it be the factor that gives them enough confidence to come to Spurs and win?
I think winning is a mentality. If you do, manage to win and then you win again, then that becomes a habit as well. And I just think, if you were a Swansea City player today, you'd be a lot more upbeat for next week than you would be if you were a Crystal Palace player. So I think that that they would have a bit more be a bit more upbeat about next week than they would have been.
For everyone that's going on Saturday, especially the Spurs fans, I think the players owe them that most definitely. A good performance and a nice win would be just what the doctor ordered, I think, moving forward. Let's do what we always do, guys, and get your previews across the board. Let's go around the table and get everyone's preview for Saturday night. Ian, let's come back to you and start with you on this one.
2-1 Spurs.
2-1 to the Spurs. So starting off in winning form. And John?
4-0 Tottenham.
John's back on the podcast.
it's going to be more of that walk in the park I was talking about.
Well, 4-0, that'd be fantastic, mate. I'll hold you to that one. And Jay?
I'll go 3-1 Tottenham. Not necessarily because I think we look brilliant going forward and we look the type of side that's going to carve a team open and score 3, but I saw the rerun of the whole 90 minutes of Swansea last night, and I certainly think we'll create enough chances to score 3 without having to play that well. Whether we take them or not, different story. But yeah, I'll go 3-1 Tottenham.
Be nice if maybe Janssen can get in on the goals. If that's the case, the high scoring game would be good for his confidence too. And last but no means least, Rick?
I'm going to go for 5-2 Spurs.
Oh,
a bit of a crazy score, I don't know, but I just think that defensively at the moment we're not looking the same. Depending obviously whether Alderweireld's back in the team, my prediction may have been different, but next weekend's a bit of a key weekend for us when you look at, I think, the fact that, United, Liverpool, Arsenal all play away, Chelsea and City play. They've all got to drop points somewhere, and if we can do our job, then, I think that will reduce the gap at the top. Only 7 points off the top. So we could be talking about a different outset this time next week, which I'm hopeful is the case because, God, we need a win.
I mean, I'm going to go for 2-0, I think. Some cautious optimism. But do you know what? I just want to see them take the shackles off for one game. Just go for it. Just have a go at Swansea and let them know they've turned up at the lane at the wrong time and send them packing. I just want to see Spurs go out there and blow a team away almost. Be lovely to see. I think they're going to play more. Of course, they're going to be more controlled than that. And I just think that would be what we need is to see Spurs go out there and blow a team away would be lovely. But 2-0, let's go.
You know what will help us, Andy? If we're 50, 60 minutes in and it's 0-0, let's get behind the team instead of all the murmurings and mumblings and grumblings and the moaners.
Agreed.
I mean, there was a game in Europe in the week, and I know you can't compare, but Besiktas played Benfica. They were 3-0 down at home in the Champions League, being ripped to pieces. And when they went to leave the field, the Turks gave them a standing ovation.
Yeah.
And their own players stayed out onto the field, applauded their fans back, came out in the second half, pulled it back to 3-3. If we were 3-0 down at home, my God, can you imagine the boos ringing round? Now, I'm not saying that would always work. I'm not saying it's always work. I'm not saying that. But we know that as a club, we look a lot better going forward and far more dangerous when we have the crowd behind us. So, let's hope all the bickering stops at least for that. And if it gets to 60 minutes, let's just keep our heads and really encourage the team. And that's all you can do.
Certainly is. Well said, Jay. And nice way to finish off this week's podcast. So, guys, don't forget to get in touch with us at @e_Spurs on the Twitter and e-Spurs page on the Facebook. Get in touch with the guys you're listening to tonight via their various Twitter accounts, all of which we'll advertise on our Twitter account throughout the week when the podcast goes live. So get in touch with them. Have your say on the podcast. Have a chat about Spurs. They're always there on the Twitter feed every day. So get in touch with the guys on the podcast. If you want a mention on next week's podcast, also hit us up on the Twitter or Facebook, #eSpurs page. Give us a message on there and we'll give you a message on next week's podcast. That is it for this week. We'll be back next week after the Swansea game. As I said before, we're also going to try and do some more of the smaller episodes, the extra time episodes that we were doing last season. We're going to try and bring them back for you on a regular basis. So look out for those. On behalf of Jason, John, Ricky, Ian and myself, guys, have a great week. Let's hope for 3 big points against Swansea on Saturday. And as always, come on you Spurs.
Playing football.